This week's episode of Founder's Ascent will be a dialogue between myself and BJ as we discuss Traction, a startup guide to getting customers by founders Gabriel Weinberg and Justin Mayers.
So Gavin, what's the number one thing you learned from reading Traction?
The number one thing would probably be the fact that startups need to make sure they're having a bunch of trial runs for their marketing channels. Most of the time, you're not going to know which channels are going to work the best. So as a founder, you need to make sure you're trying a bunch of these channels out to find which one is going to work the best for your specific niche. And you may end up getting surprised in the end because a channel that you may have not even thought of may bring you the most customers in the end. That's probably my key takeaway here.
Yeah, I really like this book more as like a reference guide. It's not a like one and done, but it's a like you go back to it and you check out the list. Because in this book, it lists 19 different marketing channels. And I don't think that's all the marketing channels there are. I think there's some more that aren't really on the list that are like kind of like one on the list, but aren't. And so all 19 of those will be in our description, so you can see that list. But I think definitely just because the rest of the industry, where you see other companies doing this marketing channel, that's probably an indicator that you maybe shouldn't do that one. Because that's already been utilized, and like you could get more customers another way. Even though, I mean, the converse could also be true, where you should use that one because that's where the audience is. And so the only way you're going to know is if you do test and try out all of these different marketing channels, even the ones that you don't particularly like, right?
Yeah, I mean, you could sit here all day and be like, hey, this one's probably going to work. And you could do a ton of research on why you think this one's going to work. And then you try it and it doesn't work. And the one that you thought wouldn't work maybe does. So
yeah, I'm very curious.
It's better to...
I'm very curious what that research would look like. Like, I feel like you can spend a lot of time looking at this and trying to justify and analyzing all these different marketing channels, trying to figure out which one's best for what you're doing. But at the end of the day, that same amount of time spent actually like doing it, you could just as quickly figure it out, and it would be more accurate. And if you're wrong, then it's fine. And if you're right, then you've already gotten started.
Yeah, and getting started, you want to make sure that you're doing your best to validate the idea. And I would even argue that validating the idea before your product is even out is a good way of doing so, right? Because if you are validating the idea here initially and not spending a ton of time making this MVP that could take hundreds or thousands of hours to make, right? You know that there is a market for this product that you may spend the time in the future making, okay? So what you could do is if you have an idea to make a game or something like that, okay, you could market this game and say 20 people are interested in this idea and they put in an order for the game. You could email them and say that you're making a version of this game, say it's like the second version, the second edition. Okay, you tell them that and say, hey, if you can wait another month, I'll be able to send you out this new second edition of this game at no extra charge. You just have to bear with me, right? And most of them are probably going to say yes. And now you're in a situation where you know this product is going to work because 20 people are interested in it, and you haven't even spent the time to actually make the game in the first place.
Yeah.
Right.
I 100% believe you should do marketing before you write the first line of code. Before you do anything else, do the marketing, build a customer base, build an audience with connections, because that's actually an unfair advantage for you. If you have an audience and connections in a realm that you're an expert in and you're passionate about, other people entering that market, they aren't going to have that. And you're going to be steps way ahead of them just within the first day of you launching because you're launching to an existing audience. That's really the only unfair advantage you can have at the start unless you have a significantly better product, which you won't know until people test it anyways, right? You don't know if your product may be perfect in terms of coding, but in terms of solving the customer's problems, you have no clue until it's actually doing that job for them. So doing that marketing, getting your first customer, maybe you have a physical product. Like I saw this video where they had a alarm system for cars, for when people broke into cars. It's an additional alarm system to help, and it was like a Yeti cup. It would fit inside their cup holder, and it would raise alarms. And one of the things that was recommended for them to do is have a checkout system, like demonstrate not the product ready to ship, but the prototype of it. Have people go through the entire process of a checkout, like this is what you're buying, enter your credit card information, all this stuff. This is the price you're paying. Get to the final screen, and then the final screen is a video of them saying, "Thank you so much for being interested in our product. It's not ready yet. We really appreciate you. We'll email you when it's done, and we'll give you a 20% discount on the first product. But thank you so much for showing you interest. It meant a lot." And so something like that. The other thing that this sort of alarm was, I think they were going to attempt to do some sort of publicity stunts with it, where it was like they would set it up and have it go off in like TikToks, where it's just short videos that were funny animated videos of it. It was just like people knocking the car and then whatever, right? That was the sort of marketing plan there, which is one of the ones sort of talked about in Traction. This idea of publicity, and that you need to show up and get everyone to know about your thing, and to get it picked up by the biggest channels you can get it picked up by. And really, what you have to keep in mind when it's getting picked up by those big channels is that you're actually doing them a favor, not the other way around. Well, it may feel like, oh, they have this massive market, why would they be interested in me? But if they're interested in you and it's picking up, that means that you have something so interesting that they actually think it's going to be providing value to them and their sort of brand and customers. So whether that's a news network or a newspaper, blog, whatever, if they're picking it up, that's you doing them a favor, because it's now, because since blogging became a thing, there are too many channels for information. Anyone can be a source of information. Now it's not about, previously there's like one newspaper in the town, right? And so if that newspaper put you in a story, that was a big deal. That meant they were doing you a favor. Now it's a whole ton of millions of creators acting as news networks, sharing information. I think PewDiePie is like the #1 source of Norwegian news or something, right?
Yeah, I think that's right.
Yeah.
Or something like that.
So there are so many networks for getting this information out, that what the biggest networks want is they want to be first with the coolest story. And so if you can make your product the coolest sounding story, that's one way to market it.
And from the beginning, you don't have to shoot for the CNN, NBC, or like Fox News. You don't have to shoot for all those in the beginning. I think a good approach is to start off by emailing local papers and news channels and work your way up the ranks, because oftentimes what will happen is these big news channels are taking stories from these smaller channels. They sort of like work their way up almost. They start from the bottom, okay? And then they take what they think is the most interesting, and then they put it at the top. Like the New York Times will do something like that. And so starting like as an actionable thing that you could probably do today, emailing those local papers that have a high chance of saying yes to you, if, you know, given you're doing something interesting. I think that's the best way you could really start off today as somebody that maybe has just gotten your product out or is working on the MVP or something like that.
Yeah,
right?
And I think you should do that when you have an announcement. Like it doesn't have to be like anything crazy, but simply either having one big announcement for you or just a number of small announcements that you're combining together to make it a big announcement. And like that can be your sort of inciting action to emailing those papers. You're telling them like, hey, this is happening. You should share this because it's interesting, right? Even if it's a local thing, even if it's your university newspaper, just getting that picked up by the local means that more eyes will see it, and it might start sort of being spread and shared, and it will maybe, if it's interesting enough, it will work its way up to the number one news channels.
Yeah, let's pretend maybe this isn't going to be something that all you guys are doing, but when Elon Musk made that tunnel under LA, like for example, like let's pretend somebody did that we had never heard of, right? What a good title would have been in like the paper is so and so figured out a way to fix traffic or something like that, because that was the intent behind that tunnel under LA. And so if you're able to do something really interesting and have some sort of catchy title for these newspaper companies, like finding a way to fix that traffic problem, you're making yourself extremely interesting. And like BJ was talking about, these papers need people like you. They do. Because without you, they have nothing to report on, right? And if they have nothing to report on, nothing interesting to report on, I should say, they're not going to be getting the views or the clicks, which would run them out of business. So people like you are what makes these companies run. So don't think that they're above you or anything like that, or you're below them, vice versa. So,
yeah, I think that's sort of breaks down the first of not the first in the book, but the first we're going to talk about of the 19 channels, which is this publicity, getting your thing out there through the natural existing channels for news, whether that's CNN or starting with subreddits, Hacker News, stuff like that, and then working its way up. That's how it happens. And one great sort of event that can sort of instigate you getting on these is doing viral marketing, or initializing a viral marketing program where rather than the concept behind viral marketing is that you want everyone on the company, every one of your customers, to bring an additional customer to your network. And if that happens, that's the exponential growth network effects. That's what made Facebook, is everyone who joined Facebook, they added to the network, and friends joined Facebook, because having one person on meant another person had a reason to join, right? And so that's how you can sort of create those programs. And there's not natural network effects, like if you have a Dropbox, like there's no benefit to having an additional user on Dropbox, not really, right? But they managed to get viral marketing just by having a referral program where if you brought a friend on, both you and them would get like 10 gigabytes of extra storage, right? And that's sort of this idea behind viral marketing, where if you can get your existing customer base to get additional customers for you, that's so much easier, right? You don't actually have to do that much marketing. You just have to get just enough customers to have that critical mass that's going to lead to that exponential growth.
Yeah, I remember with Coinbase, once you sign up to create your account and you start spending money with them, they'll have this pop up and it'll say that if you share Coinbase to one of your friends and they spend like $50 on the app, you'll get $10 in Bitcoin or something like that. And that's a pretty good way. I remember sending that link to my brother for sure. So it worked for me. I could say that. And PayPal, I think, is a really good example as well. When they were starting off, PayPal was offering people $10 to sign up for their account. And so back in the day, like that was like, even if a company was offering $10 today, I'd be like, geez, that's kind of crazy just to create your account, right? And so I thought that was kind of interesting. If I was given $10 to create an account, I would definitely reach out to my friends, like, guys, I just got $10 just to make an account. Might as well, right? And you reach out to your friends and go viral in that way, right?
With PayPal offering $10, I'm very curious how much money they make off a customer, like average for the lifetime value of that customer, because I know
more than 10.
yeah. I know insurance companies, right? Insurance companies, they'll pay like 5 to 10,000 for a single customer.
Wow.
Because the lifetime value of that customer, them paying like $1,000 a month or whatever it is into insurance, that over the course of years more than pays for, even with the risks associated with insurance. Like, they're willing to pay that much just because the lifetime value of the customer. And so if you can do that, like, I mean, be smart about this. Do the math. Don't offer $10 when you're making $5 off each customer, right? Mm-hmm. But if you can have a program like that, that might be the best way you can get customers initially, is this sort of viral affiliate program, or not affiliate, sorry, viral referral program, where everyone just wants everyone else on there. Whether that's because you're paying them, whether that's because they simply add value to that network. If you can sort of tap into existing networks of people, right? That's what you're doing with Publicity. That's what you're doing here. You're tapping into existing networks, but rather than being like news networks, this is social networks. You're placing the bet that everyone knows enough people where they can reach them personally, right? And from that personal connection, that's how you can grow your business, is just everyone getting value out of this and sharing it.
Yeah. And then the next point we could talk about here is blogs and targeting existing communities, right? Noah Kagan, BJ loves Noah Kagan. He used to work at Facebook, and he started this company called Mint. And what
he didn't quite start it. He joined, like, I think he was employee number 6 at Mint.
Oh, okay. Yeah. And he was their head of marketing, right?
Yeah, never done marketing before, but he took over the marketing plan for Mint Mobile, which you may have heard of.
Probably.
Yeah.
And what his plan was to target existing blogs that were kind of centered around like financials, right? And he was able to say, hey, I'll give you guys X amount of money if you talk about Mint in your next episode on your YouTube channel or your blog or whatever. And they were able to grow extremely quickly targeting these existing communities, because like, if there's a YouTube channel out there with like 1 million subscribers, I mean, their price may be kind of high, but you're getting it out there to however many views this particular channel is getting. I'd assume at least 100,000 just right off the bat. And Mr. Beast talks about this a lot with creative freedom as well. I mean, this is probably more towards the higher YouTubers, but allowing them to have creative freedom over the advertisement in their video, I think is pretty crucial as well. Because if you say, as the company, you need to do this to the particular, like to the exact T that I'm telling you to do it, it may not work as well, because giving the person creative freedom that has been able to gain 1 million followers from scratch, or 1 million subscribers from scratch, may be what you need to do. And again, like we were talking about in the very beginning, trial and errors can be the best way to do so. So you could critique it as you go.
Yeah. And so I think I support a different approach when it comes to blogs. I would say don't go for the guy with 1 million, because the guy with 1 million followers probably knows more about brand deals and knows exactly what their audience is worth. And they're staking more on the line. Like, if you're a new company, right, you have no reputation, no credibility. They do. And they would be putting that on the line if they were promoting your product. And so they would prefer not to screw up the trust that they have with their audience. I would argue go for the smaller guys. Go for the people who just got monetized as 1,000 subscribers, 10,000 subscribers. Honestly, you might be the first brand dealer. That would be fantastic. You send them an email. Hey, can I pay you $500? They would go wild. And they honestly, you could, depending on how you word it, you could word it as if this could be the first brand deal of many, right? If this goes well, if we get enough customers. And they would probably, the people with 1,000 subscribers, they probably have a closer connection with their audience. So what they can do is they can promote it directly to those people, and they probably care a lot more than the million subscribers, simply because they have a small audience. It's probably their first brand deal. And you can pay them what's the average rate, and they can think, wow, that's a lot of money. I've never made money off this before, right? And so that can be very meaningful for them. And so I would say target the smaller existing communities, target the influencers with the tighter connections to their audience, and they'll remember your brand forever. The first brand deal, right? Next time you call them up, they're happy to do it. Right. And so that long-term connection over time, I think, is fantastic. I think being the first there. And so, I mean, this is something you can do right now. Just go Google search for 5-10 blogs in your niche and just send them an email. Whether or not you can pay them, if you can, that's very meaningful and you'll probably get super high quality content. If you can't pay them, then just try to persuade them into writing about you. To convince them that whatever project you're working on is interesting enough that it deserves to be written about, and it's actually providing value to them and their audience, right? And you could offer to give up your time to do a full interview where you can answer all their questions and give them exclusive access. Like, you can offer all of them, hey, you can be the first to interview about this rising startup, right? Even though they would be first because no one's interested in interviewing you. But that still can be the appeal, that you would be the first to sort of get in on this, get information about this startup that might become a really big thing. And so that's how you can use blogs. Like Gavin was talking about, Noah Kagan used this at Mint. The goal was 100,000 users in 6 months. They got 1 million. So it worked out.
It worked out pretty well.
Yeah. So that's blogs. And a lot of people think, and so that's not necessarily you having your own blog. That's you tapping into other people's blogs to get access. But you can also start your own blog and start doing content marketing, whether that's a blog, whether that's a YouTube channel, Instagram account, TikTok, whatever. You can do that. And the really nice thing about doing this content marketing, and sort of also with just the blog posts, is that once you post something, once you create a piece of content like that, that's out there, that's providing value to people. And it will continue to provide value to people and continue to get customers years down the line, where a lot of other marketing channels, paid advertisement, these publicity stunts, right? They'll get you attention, but then as soon as you stop paying them or the publicity dies down, there's nothing more to get attention on to your product, and that's not great when you're building a business, right?
With content marketing, Gary Vee's the first person that really comes to mind for me. He gives away most of his stuff for free, and that really builds to the prestige behind his name. And if Gary Vee's behind a project, you're probably going to be a lot more inclined to maybe buy that product or service that he's offering. I remember what was that wine company he made? Empathy Wines
Yeah,
or something like that.
empathy wines. Yeah, the
He yeah.
yeah, that I think that
He didn't
exited.
yeah, he's not behind it anymore, but when he was starting it off, I remember it's not like he was marketing in a ton. You know, he was still doing the normal Gary Vee stuff. He was still making his normal content, and just every now and then he'd slip the empathy wines thing in there. And I mean, I wasn't drinking wine, but I think for the people that were of age and that were interested in finding a good company to purchase wine from, I think it was very useful, right? Like, do you know how much he ended up selling the company for?
I don't. I'm sure we can figure that out real quick. I do remember that I remember watching a live video of his that was their release of the wine company and like the first tasting, like, and I remember what they were saying was that Gary Vee believed from all his years in the wine business, he ran his dad's wine store and grew it to a massive, massive company. And in all his years, he thought this was the best quality wine you could buy at that price point. The best like $20 wine you could get. Did you look up how much it?
Yeah, he sold it for 1.1 billion.
Yeah,
So,
that's the power of building this content and building this brand. Is that you establish that credibility, and once you have that credibility and once you have people loyal to you, it doesn't matter what you're selling. They trust you.
oh yeah,
And they're going to buy it. And so long as you maintain that trust, long term, that's going to scale. And a lot of people know this. Gary Vee wants to buy the Jets, right? If the owners of the Jets dies and the Jets go on auction, right? And he's 10 million short, 100 million short. He's built such a powerful brand.
oh yeah, like
I totally can see of his 10 million plus followers, everyone just tossing in a few bucks, and so he can get the Jets. And that's because he's done this content marketing. And the key with the content marketing is you're going to have to stick to it, right? We'll talk about this soon, but it's going to take work for your blogs and your content to rank. Like, first off, your content is going to be trash at the beginning, right?
like ours was.
Like ours maybe still is. I'm not sure. We're getting better, right? But like, you don't do content marketing because you post once and it's just going to happen. You do content marketing so your 100th post gets attention. You need to post once to get to that 100th post. You need to post 100 times to get to that 100th post. But you're not doing it for that first post. That first post is just a necessary step. And so that content marketing can be time consuming. That it certainly is going to take time. It also can take time to make the content. And you probably should be the one to make it, even as a founder. Because how are you going to judge the quality of the content? Sure, you can pay someone else to do it. But, I mean, unless you have a really solid understanding of, or sort of a really direct sales funnel with your content marketing, you probably won't be able to see the impact. And so you need to have your sort of own metrics and own plan for implementing it. And even if you're tapping into other people, you should really have a hand in, I feel like, making the content, making it yours, sort of making... The nice thing about content is that it sticks around, right? That's the benefit. But if all that your content is just like, here's why our product is way better than all our competitors all the time, and that's just your constant post, it's just comparing yourself to competitors or whatever, that's not providing a whole ton of value, right? It's you probably should have a post ranking for that. You should have posts that sort of, if someone's asking what's the difference between you and a competitor, that means they're probably pretty close to buying, right? They're pretty close to buying your product or service. And so you should have a post sort of ranking for that. But your posts shouldn't all be about sales. A lot of them should just be building your brand, providing free value to people so that you can, what I really think this is about with content marketing is figuring out your audience's pains and passions. Whatever it is, if it's something that's painful to them and difficult, you should have a blog with the solution. If it's something they're passionate about, you should play into that passion. Like there was an infographic site that it's like a design tool for making infographics, and they did a diagram of all the betrayals in Game of Thrones, right? Just as I think this was as the last season was coming out, and did this nice thing where everyone was interested in Game of Thrones at that time. So it made a lot of sense for them to do this and demonstrate the power of their site just by making this fun little piece of content. And so if you can sort of take what's viral right now, like right now, I see all these posts about AI and implementing AI into everything. AI for house cleaners, AI for movie makers, whatever, right? And so if you can play into those trends, I think that's a great thing to do today, is look for trends, look for pains and passions in your audience, and see if you can provide content that meet those needs.
Mm-hmm. And then we can move on here to search engine optimization. And in the book, they talk about first long tail versus flatheads with searches. The flatheads are going to be those sort of like buzzwords, like those searches in Google that are like one word, stuff like that, which are around 30% of the searches. And then the next one is going to be long tail, that are more those longer niche searches. And they make up 70% of the general searches. And they're all fairly niche, but in aggregate, they make up 70%. And starting off here, especially as those small startups like most of you guys are probably going to be, I think it's going to be better to target those long tails and find that niche that you could get down really well and then expand out from there. And maybe you'll become in the future one of those companies that is able to get those fathead searches, those buzzwords, those keywords. Like I think BJ was saying that Gary Vee was able to be the first person to come up when people searched in wine at one point.
Yeah.
Right.
For like $1 a click, which is insane. That
yeah,
like anyone searching for wine, the first thing they saw was his company, and that's why he grew it to millions.
And so I think it's, as a startup, trying to, I think they mentioned in this book as well, starting with those long tails and going out from there is going to be your best way of getting off the ground.
Yeah. And so definitely the person I go to is Rand Fishkin. He has a book called Lost and Founder. He's the founder of Moz, the SEO company that provides tools in this space. And really, like, you're just going to have to become educated in this. You're going to have to do your research for your specific niche, for what keywords are people typing in. And you can do that sort of research just by yourself. You don't necessarily need a tool. You can go to Google and whatever your, let's say you make accounting software. You can type accounting software in the Google search bar and see what it autofills, right? After it, all the suggested. And that's probably what your audience is looking at, right? And you can sort of target and double down on your niche. And maybe you do some SEO to validate your business idea before you write any code. Maybe that's how you check, is there enough search volume? Go on Google Trends and see, okay, is there enough search volume for accounting software for daycares or accounting software for dog walkers or whatever, I don't know, where you check and see, is there volume for this to determine whether or not you can step into the market. And that's the other big thing you need for SEO is you need to improve your site's credibility to rank. You want to be the first thing that shows up on Google, and you can either do that through paid or you can do that through search engine optimization. And by doing search engine optimization, you don't have to pay, which is nice. It's free organic traffic. That's probably a lot more valuable than the paid where it shows up and then you scroll past it. But in order to improve your credibility, you need a lot of sites linking back to you, right? And that just helps Google know and all the other search engines know that your site is credible, that it's respected by the community, and so how you can do that, one, is guest posting on other people's blogs, right? You have your own blog or your own YouTube channel, and you go on other people's YouTube channels, other people's blogs, and you write and help create content with them, and then everything gets shared. You get to expose their audience to your content. You get the links, and because of those links, you increase what's called your domain authority, which helps Google know that you're a trusted source, and then Google will rank you higher. Now, you should be concerned about Google also ranking you lower for tactics that sort of skirt about the system. Like, I know you can buy links and you can trade links between other people to link back to their sites and whatever. And if you do that, Google's likely to rank you lower because they think you're trying to scam them and provide not valuable content and try to game the system, which you need to stay away from that, because if that happens, it's very difficult to recover, right? Google sees that you're doing all these tactics and they just never let you get traffic again, is sort of how it goes. So stay firmly on the side of the good, where you're just using keywords and links and figuring out your sort of long tail versus fat head strategy. And that's how you can really use SEO to build your business, I think, is forming these business connections and optimizing those keywords.
Yeah, and with doing it the wrong way, stuff like that, like paying, that may work in the short term, but in the long term, it's not going to be the best way of doing so. You want to do it the natural way. You want to build that credibility and not throw a bunch of cash at it and hope it works, right?
Yeah, and I think you're going to want that organic traffic so you have feedback on your content, right? If you do all those other tactics, you won't have feedback, and then it's harder to improve your content. And so you'll get stuck at the point where you're just making bad content and paying for it to succeed, which isn't a great business model.
Yeah, I certainly don't think it is. And the last point we're going to talk about here is going to be engineering is marketing. What that essentially is when you log on to a website, generally like a software as a service website, the one that comes to mind is when we were starting this podcast, I was looking up a bunch of websites to help create thumbnails and like photo editors and stuff like that. And they'll let you use their software for free. And then once you finish it, a pop-up will come up and be like, okay, if you want to save this to your computer, you need to sign up and create an account. And that's a prime example as in engineering, as marketing, because most people aren't going to purchase your software or product or whatever if they haven't tried it out.
Yeah.
They're going to be a lot more inclined. Because if I've tried it out, I'll probably buy it if I like it, of course.
Yeah, it definitely depends on your price point, right? If it's a free trial, like that's a lot of reasons why so many softwares have free trials, is they want you to see the benefits of it and then start paying for it. And so that's one example, I guess, of engineering as marketing. I think of like just plugins and Chrome extensions. Like there's the Grammarly Chrome extension, which I think is one of the most useful Chrome extensions I have installed, which just Grammarly on everything. Anywhere where I'm typing on the internet, Grammarly is in the little corner. It's sometimes very annoying. It sometimes pops up in blocks, like the whole text box.
Yeah.
Yeah. But when it's not annoying, it's very useful. And that, even though like I'm not paying for Grammarly Premium, that's increased what my perceived value of Grammarly, right? The fact that they are providing these useful suggestions and they've created this free software that I find useful. That adds to their credibility. And if they came to me and pitched me, 80% off this product, I would be more inclined to check it out because I've had this experience with this sort of free software tool they've provided. Same thing with if you search for like a lot of people have the speed. I think AOL had the speed tester for your internet. Maybe it wasn't AOL. But like the companies that have their speed tester, they can see how their internet performs compared to this other internet company, right? And so that's a free thing, but it's a free engineering, and it's probably not that too hard to make, right? It's just sending packages across the internet and then waiting for the timing out the response time. So it's not a very hard thing to do. But those sort of little engineering projects that add credibility, that add value to your audience, that can be great for building your brand.
Yeah, for sure. And what you could do is, I guess I could use the game example. Something that we did in the beginning was we sort of made our version of a negotiation game in Excel, and we linked it in one of our videos for everybody else to visit if they wanted. And so that's one way you could do it if you're starting off. I think engineering as marketing is pretty difficult to do when you're first starting off, especially if you don't know how to code or something like that. So there is a barrier to entry in that sense. But if you get creative like that, like what we did with the Excel thing, you could find ways around it.
I think you can view it as a barrier, and I think from your background that makes sense. From my background, I think that's great. Engineering as marketing, I don't have to learn marketing. I can just apply my normal coding skills, right? So if you don't know how to code, you probably shouldn't do engineering as marketing unless you have a good engineering team. But if you do know how to code, that's probably your best bet, right? If all you know how to do is make good products, and then you can link those products together into promoting this bigger, you create a whole ton of Chrome extensions all around financial tools, and then you have your core financial tool that people pay for. That's going to drag a lot of attention to that core tool. And so if you know how to code, this is probably one of the best ways you can market. Is just doing what you like to do. Just keep doing that. It's probably the least painful too.
Yeah, I think Naval says that the person that finds out how to create and market is going to be an unstoppable person. So to all you coders out there, this could be your your start with marketing here. I think they go very well together. Of all the marketing strategies that we could talk about, this is probably one of the first ones you could pick up.
Yeah.
Maybe pretty easily if you're good.
Yeah, in terms of ones that I think, all the ones I think we talked about today are pretty easy to pick up. We excluded a lot of the ones, like I said, there were 19 and we only got to a handful of them. But these are the ones that I think you could do today. That if you sat down, you could go and publish a blog. It's not very hard, right? If you know how to code, you can publish it for free on GitHub pages. Look it up. You can publish a blog for free on GitHub pages. And it's a full functioning website. You can collect emails. You can do all the nice stuff. And it's very simple to do. If you want to do content marketing, YouTube channel is 2 minutes, right? 2 minutes to create an account.
It's almost too easy with that.
Right? Publicity, if you're creative, it's very easy. If you can think of something crazy relating to your market, very simple. Viral marketing, you can create a system and then just send it out to your family. Send it out to your friends. Send it out to everyone you know. For SEO, that's going to take some research maybe. You might like some tools to help you. But there's something you can do today. If to improve your search engine optimization. You can, if you have a website for your company, just making sure you're doing all the right stuff, best practices. I'm sure there's a YouTube video out there that explains best practices for SEO for websites. And like they can tell you, do your meta tags, do keywords, do all this other stuff, right? But I really hope everyone can take away and start doing a little bit of marketing from this. Be sure to check out the full book and all 19, because remember what we said at the beginning, it's all about trying out different channels, seeing what works for your industry and your niche and what you're trying to do.
Yeah, because there's no point in guessing, right?
Yeah. And you can't really do research. It's just about experience and trying it out. So thank you so much for watching. We think that you should probably send this to your marketing person on your team, right? If you made it this far and think this was useful, send this to someone who might also find it useful, and we'd really appreciate that. Be sure to like and subscribe, and we'll see you next week, Tuesday at noon.
Bye, everybody.
See ya.